Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, her website, taxpayer.com. Welcome back to the show, Kris.
Thanks for having us.
British Columbia right now should be in a state of disaster. As far as we know, the Premier is yet to declare one. Washington State declared a disaster, and they had the same weather system 2 days ago. Where are the helicopters? Where's the Army? The Prime Minister said, I'll provide anything BC asks for. Is BC asking for anything? I have been through natural disasters in several provinces now since I started broadcasting in 1975. British Columbia this year has probably had the poorest response to everything, whether it's COVID and long-term care homes, a heat wave, and now disastrous flooding and landslides, not just in the Lower Mainland, across the province. And we have a Premier and Cabinet sitting on their hands. What? Singing Kumbaya? What?
It's bad. And usually I try not to use like really inflammatory language, but it's we're out here in the Fraser Valley, in the east end of it. It's a catastrophe. There are 4 major highways that run through Hope. It's like a central clearinghouse for your arteries. It comes straight through here and in hairpin turns. Every single one of those highways is either broken or blocked right now. We have 1,200 people trapped in the town of Hope. No supplies are coming in. The store shelves are empty. And if declaring an emergency or a catastrophe or whatever terminology that bureaucrats need to use will help, they needed to have done that days ago. And today's now a good time. You know, the best time to do things is right now. So they need to get on that. What I'm noticing here, personally, is a strange situation where in the town of Hope, for example, they have a massive rec center. Huge. It's got a skating rink, it's got a curling rink on the other side, big pool, lots of showers, there's a kitchen, big area where people could sleep. It's been locked and closed as far as we understand, unless there's some mystery emergency people that are housed there that we don't know about. But the townspeople understand that it's been locked and closed now for 3 days when we've got all these folks stranded here. The places that are making the difference is the Grace Baptist Church, which is like the biggest physical church in Hope. A couple smaller churches have now opened. And the local high school principal, kudos, took it upon herself to get up at 3 a.m, first night, go down to her school, and she opened it up. So the Hope High School is the emergency shelter right now, along with the Grace Baptist Church. What we're saying is it's usually the actions of people of action and private citizens that are making a huge difference right now. As far as government coordination goes, don't care which party's in power, they got to get their act together better. Their communication lines need to be better. They need to spend less time imagining what the best possible wording is of something and get in gear. Because right now this is going to become a bigger crisis based on what's going on in the Fraser Valley in that floodplain.
Well, I don't belong to any particular political party. Never have. I never will, because I feel I should have the right to criticize any politician for doing a bad job, and I'll praise one for doing a good job. But John Horgan, forest fires, he was offered major firefighting facilities, like an automatic firefighting system you can drag out with hoses that's ready in an hour or two. He never used that. The owner of the Martin Mars water bomber, years ago offered to fly for free one night to prove that his giant aircraft that can put out 4 acres of fire at a time could work in BC. That offer was turned down flat. So even when people offer this person stuff for free or a chance to demonstrate the capability to prevent fires, not turned down. And that's what the Mars does best, is fight a forest fire before it gets serious. You put out 4 acres of a starting fire, well, it's done after 2 or 3 passes. An example, the bog fire in the Lower Mainland in Delta. I was told it would take 3 to 4 months to put it out because it was burning so deep. They bring in the Martin Mars. The firefighters actually cheered. I saw that happen. And the fire was essentially out in 3 days. So BC has a history of turning down resources. I'm scared if the Prime Minister says, hey, we'll send every available Canadian Armed Forces member that we can to BC. John Horgan will form a committee and 3 months from now decide, maybe not.
This is the thing where we'll talk about, we want lower taxes, less waste, a more accountable government. This fits in every way, especially the waste and accountable government. Many times it's difficult for government to be accountable if they get too big. And you nailed it there by forming a committee and waiting for 3 months. In emergency response situations, you don't have time. You can't sit around and discuss it at an all-party committee for months on end. And
he must be a natural panicker. That's all I can say. Some people are born natural leaders in a disaster, and you're going to give a great example of natural leadership in a second, preventing serious flooding in a part of BC. Mm-hmm. But some people in the disaster are the first in the lifeboat, like the Italian captain of the Costa Concordia, where 33 people died. And the Coast Guard ordered him back on board his ship to organize the rescue, and he refused, and now he's serving time for non-voluntarily manslaughter in Italy. Mm-hmm. I think it amounts to about 6 weeks for every person killed. But here in British Columbia, John Horgan, I'm sorry, you have blown it. If you were a quarterback, you have thrown 7 interceptions on the first 7 passes. If you were a goalie, you've let in 10 goals on the first 10 shots. Isn't there somebody in your government who knows how to take control and recognizes an emergency? Do you have 5 drunk and stoned monkeys running your emergency services department with an unlimited supply of booze and drugs, but no access to telephones, the internet, TVs, or radios?
You know, the minister that's helping right now, who's kind of in charge because Horgan is facing that health issue, we hope he recovers from it fully, he's been in charge of public safety and responses now for years. Pretty clear-minded guy from, the way he talks.
Mike Farnworth.
Exactly. And so this is where we need to start expecting better. Once all this flood clears and hopefully there's no more loss of life, what we're seeing with the mudslides is just horrific. Once this clears, there needs to be some reckoning and some accountability, because they got to figure out what the problem is. Is it that there's too many cooks in the kitchen? Where did the communication break down? They need to be more nimble in responses. And it doesn't have to be that there's like a team of like government-trained, government-paid emergency response people sitting there in an office waiting to go. That's not practical. What this is initiating forces that you've already earmarked. So how many people do you have in, say, the Fraser Valley who are cops, firefighters, emergency responses, armed forces, both retired and active duty? You need to keep lists and data banks of those folks.
Bet you they don't have them.
This is the thing. You need to be able to call them up in a moment's notice for help. And so I'm going to do my journalistic due diligence because old habits die hard. This could change. The facts I'm about to give you right now are what I'm piecing together literally from online, from social media. So if things change between now and air date, I apologize, but we've got, as we say, changing variables here. From what we can tell, one of the major pumps in Abbotsford that keeps the Sumas Lake from reverting back to a Sumas Lake because it was fully artificially drained earlier in the last century. A lot of folks don't know that. Massive area in driving through the Sumas Plains, a big flat spot. That was a lake, like an actual lake. They drained it, and it stays drained because of infrastructure and because people are maintaining the pumps. Late last night, the mayor of Abbotsford had a press conference, emergency press conference, telling people to flee because some of the pumps, he was scared, were at risk of being compromised, meaning being flooded, and they would stop working. Now, this is the part that I'm not sure about, but from what we can tell piecing things together, it looks like some guys and some girls got together in their trucks with bags and sand and shovels and put out the word with their friends, and they, as private citizens, from what we understand, drove to the pump house and built a sandbag wall around it. And the mayor said it bought them critical time. Now again, there could be an official government response that was helping to coordinate that, but at this point, that isn't clear. It sounds like that was a citizen emergency response initiative, and we thank them for doing so, but we shouldn't be counting on that. Like, they gotta have better ways of counting on these systems.
Well, why is an emergency declaration important? Well, it gives the province the power to immediately deputize anyone and everyone to help out, use their skill sets. They can go and demand the use of any kind of equipment, helicopters, boats, bulldozers, backhoes. You have no choice. You have to provide that service. Worry about paying the bills later.
Yep.
Because I remember my dad, a construction worker, the Mounties knocking on our door saying, do you know how to operate a bulldozer? Yes. You're deputized. You're fighting the forest fire down the road.
Yep.
That's why that declaration is so important. It gives them the power and the ability to do things at a moment's notice. But again, the BC government, at every time a disaster has hit, seems to be paralyzed from the neck up.
And most people in that situation wouldn't need to be compelled to do so anyway. They would volunteer to do it. But because the declaration happens, that then gets the Mounties or other coordinators in the area to go out and do and say those things. So most private citizens will jump at the chance to help. They will use their skills, they will use their equipment, they will grab their diesel generators, they're ready to go. But it's that emergency declaration that spurs local authorities to say so. It's interesting. I have a very similar experience. I was a little kid in the Fraser Valley, and there was a bunch of teenagers that had gone rafting on the Coquihalla River, and my uncle, who is a search and rescue tech, he was off duty, he was visiting, and late one night, cops knocked on the door. They said, do you have this training and this training? Yes, sir. He said, grab your scuba gear. And off they went. Now, unfortunately, it was a recovery effort, and they did recover the teens. They weren't able to save them because Coquihalla is treacherous. But that's the sort of action that is taken within minutes. And again, kudos to the thousands, untold thousands of people who will be unsung heroes in this situation, who are out there day and night with their shovels and their backhoes and their trucks, and they're pulling people out of mudslides, and they're digging people out of ditches, they're putting people up in their homes, they're feeding like 1,200 people depending on where they are. Private citizens and British Columbians have really stepped in here. Like, their shoulder is right into it, and it's really admirable. But once this all clears out, they need to figure out, and again, like, I don't hate them at all. We know that this is difficult, but there's something wrong with the communications structure, it sounds like, with government, and they need to figure it out. Once this disaster is behind us, and let's hope that that's sooner than later, they need to do an honest reckoning and figure out where the communication lines are breaking down. But we've got a lot of work cut out for us. The supply lines are critical. Let's hope that they're focusing on key areas. So, for example, getting an east-west corridor reopened for supplies and people and emergency supplies is really important. So if the number one is under too much water through the Fraser Valley, they obviously need to be looking at the 7, which is up further on the ridge on the other side of the Fraser. Perhaps that's safer. Perhaps that isn't as compromised. Let's hope so. And make sure that is open so it comes down through the valley, down through Hope, and out towards the Okanagan so you can get some east-west supply lines going, because grocery stores are pretty much empty right now. And they need to also focus on other spots where they can shore up the lines. So the 7 that goes from Vancouver to Hope, and then the 3, the Crow's Nest Pass that goes from Hope out to the Okanagan and through to Alberta. I'm assuming that there's smart folks at Transportation and Emergency that are working out those lines right now.
Yeah, why isn't Canada using its fleet of Hercules to fly in emergency supplies right now? Because they're waiting for some kind of a plea for help from John Horgan.
Or, armed forces in their cormorants, the 442 Squadron.
Yep.
They were rescuing people. So
Damn right.
There is activity happening, but whatever needs to be done right now, I'll put it this way, to bring in supplies to different places, if it's Hope, if it's Abbotsford, if it's Chilliwack, because apparently up in Vernon, there's empty grocery stores because the supply lines are right here. The critical infrastructure from the coast into the inland, interior is right here. So they need to start figuring out those supply lines like right away. And if that means bringing supplies up from the States or bringing more stuff over from Alberta, then they need to get on that because things are getting sketchy.
Yeah. Now, I never get a sense of urgency from this government that things need to be done, and will they be any more organized after this? I hold out little hope for it because we've had continuous emergencies. And using COVID as an excuse, I don't see other people, when there's an emergency, use that as an excuse.
In the east, just before I moved out to Ottawa, they had a huge ice storm a couple of years out. I think it was 1997 or around about there. And they did learn a lot from it. And they used a lot of those things that they did during the ice storm, which had brought down power and had, caved in roofs. When they had some flooding on the Ottawa and the Rideau rivers a couple of years after, they used the same systems. And it seemed to work. I mean, nothing's ever perfect in an emergency, and it gets tough, but it seemed to flow better than it used to. So I'm trying to be optimistic and hope that lessons can be learned out of this, so that next time they're able to help people faster. But again, I know there are thousands of people who've been running 24/7 for 3 or 4 days now on this, and just absolute kudos to them. But as far as the top-down government response, they need to have clearer channels. So, for example, things as simple as making sure the rec centers are open for evacuees, not relying on billeting in private homes and local Facebook bulletin boards to save people.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. We just had the Global Climate Change Conference. Again, the big players, India, China, Russia, don't want to play ball with the rest of us, so okay. What can little Canada do, especially with a government, both provincial and federal, that wants to impose carbon taxes that aren't just a little bit of your paycheck, but a major chunk of it? How much of a difference can Canada make?
Unfortunately, we can't. And Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, said this himself. I'll put it even this way. He admitted it himself, en français, during one of the most listened to French language media shows really in the world. It's called Tout le monde en parle, and it's broadcast out of Montreal. And a couple of years ago, he was correct when he said, listen, because we account for less than 2% of global emissions, even if we stop everything, and I'll put this in parentheses, what everything means is literally heating our homes, growing our crops, heating our rec centers and our grocery stores, and trucking things across Canada so we can eat. That's what he means by everything. And parentheses, even if we stopped everything tomorrow, it wouldn't make a dent. So in the whole grand scheme, if global emissions are your thing, if that's your key worry about the world, and that's fine if it is, even if we stopped everything, it wouldn't make a dent. So, with that being understood in the arithmetic, they really need to figure out a better way of reducing global emissions if that's truly their goal. Because picking on Canada and trying to nail people for $20 every single time extra for filling up their minivan so they can go do a big grocery shop at Costco in Langley isn't going to matter. That won't affect your goal of reducing global emissions. What the carbon tax does here in British Columbia is just take it from average working people, and it's a lot of money. It's around $2 billion per year, billion with a B. So that is a ton of cash that they're taking from people who are paying a tax for driving to work, driving to school, heating their homes, buying their groceries, trucking essential supplies across Canada. That's who's paying the tax, okay? And our emissions keep going up. This is a critical point that the government keeps trying to ignore. So again, let's say global emissions is your key thing. That's your goal, is to reduce that. Our emissions are going up in British Columbia, even though we have the highest carbon taxes in North America. Okay? So doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result has been described as the definition of insanity. We are being driven crazy by these useless, expensive carbon taxes. And we mean useless in the sense that they're not reducing emissions, and expensive in the sense that they really eat into people's bottom lines. So if it costs you, there's 2 carbon taxes in British Columbia right now. There's the first one, which is 10 cents a liter, and there's a second one. It's a fuel regulation that is there required by government. And on average, that fuel regulation adds about 16 cents to the cost of a liter of gasoline. So combined, our carbon taxes in British Columbia are about 26 cents a liter. Do the math. That means it's about $20 extra every time you're filling up your minivan.
Yes.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, and plus add in the lower mainland, there's an 18.5 cent per liter TransLink transit tax.
Yeah, for TransLink, who, blows money on their corporate suite, like without batting an eye. They'll pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, more than the Prime Minister of Canada, to be the head of a regional bus board. It's wrong. I did a comparison as to what people were being paid at TransLink, especially their head honchos, and it's amazing. They were being paid comparable wages to the New York City transit bosses. Like, really?
We move 12 million people a day.
Exactly. Thank you. It doesn't even compare. Like, if you started comparing, it's laughable if you start comparing it. But that's where we're blowing our money. And so with the carbon tax, too, it's not just you filling up your pickup truck or your minivan or whatever. You need to figure out how much that adds to the cost of your groceries or anything that's around you that was brought to you by a truck, because trucks run on diesel. And then also the grocery stores, they usually use natural gas to stay cool, or to cool their deli meat, or to, heat up the chicken, the rotisserie chicken. That also pays a carbon tax. And then people heating their homes. And now you get the idea. You can kind of start layering it like a deck of cards on how much it adds to the cost. And to insult to injury, it's not working. So we're hurting our bottom line. It's the average working class people that are getting it right in the teeth right now with this carbon tax cost, and it's not helping the planet. If they truly, truly wanted to reduce global emissions, they could do something like negotiate a natural gas deal with India. They want to switch to natural gas, they say. They want to buy natural gas, they say. We have a lot of it. If we sold it to them, we would provide great jobs over here in Canada with the best labor and environmental rules in the world. And folks in India could switch to cleaner, way cleaner natural gas and stop burning animal dung and wood scrap, which is causing heavy emissions. And a lot of people don't know this, but the United States of America dropped their emissions without a carbon tax, largely because they switched over to natural gas for power production. It's that much cleaner. And so I'm not a petrochemical fuel expert. I speak to petrochemical fuel experts all the time, and they look at me like it's a no-brainer when I ask them, well, how do we really actually fight climate change? Like, let's get serious about this. And they look at you like, look at India. Look at places like China. That's the big end of the arithmetic. And so if that's what folks want to do, then they should really pursue that angle.
Now, I know one of the reasons environmentalists are against natural gas is they're worried about the methane emissions from leaking natural gas pipelines. Recent satellite photos show the U.S. and Canada pretty well clear of leaks, but Russia is one huge methane-producing, leaking country, which they deny being, of course, just like they denied that blowing up that unused satellite wouldn't cause a danger to future astronauts or the people in the current space station. There's something like 1,500 pieces of debris
or
that
it sends a really wonky signal.
Yeah, and these things are doing a minimum of 25,000 miles an hour.
Sure.
Yeah,
exactly.
So a bolt hitting you at that kind of speed, that's like being hit by a bomb.
Yeah, and they, not to get into my geopolitical bent, but they know that, or at least they should. So that's touchy. But if you want to get to the natural gas element then too, India is looking for natural gas. They're trying to find a seller. Russia will be more than happy to sell it to them. Do we want them switching to Russian natural gas with all that methane leakage, like you just pointed out, and who knows what kind of labor environmental standards? Or would you like it to come from Canada, where they're trapping the methane and they want to reuse the stuff? I heard a very smart person, I forget who it was, who had basically said when they first started using oil, that all they wanted out of it was kerosene. Just imagine what that is now, what we get out of it. You know, the plastics and all of the polymers and the special stuff we take from oil. And so they're trying to get as much as they can out of it. Same thing goes for gas. And so if that means recapturing methane or carbon or using it, they're just going to recapture it and use it for something else as a value-added product or as a form of fuel. Because it's a smart thing to do. I mean, why waste the energy?
And for the people who say we should stop oil and gas exploration now, well, it always takes time to phase from one technology to another. And I just watched a documentary on the servicing of Sweden's giant wind mills that near the Arctic Circle. All the vehicles that service them run on diesel. You need rubber to coat all of those big transmission lines to insulate them. The transmission fluid used by the 20-ton generators on each windmill use petroleum oil for lubricants, because it's the best. So even in a world like Sweden, where they're doing their very, very, very best to be carbon neutral, you still need petroleum products to make the non-petroleum things work.
Absolutely.
It's not an all or other.
No, we can't. We can't flip a switch tomorrow and switch. And we can't, rid ourselves of petroleum products. We just, our current civilization would cease to function. Not just the niceties that people imagine, I can't believe I'm calling it a nicety, to be able to drive to work or heat your home. Our food production, like our agriculture, the way we don't starve to death, is reliant on that technology. So we can't stop tomorrow. And even if we do want to transition, I heard a stat the other day, my jaw hung open. Okay, so Blair King, okay, he's a specialist. I hope I'm not, mistitling him here. He has a blog called A Chemist in Langley. Super smart guy. And to give him credit, we disagree on the carbon tax. He wants the carbon taxes. I don't want the carbon taxes, but he's a smart guy, and we talk all the time. His analysis, he went and did the math on the energy usage of just using fuels, okay? So as far as I know, he wasn't getting into, nuclear possibilities or anything like that. From what I understand, he went through the usage of, I think it was diesel and gasoline. So as far as I know, it wasn't heating. It was just vehicles. I couldn't believe his stat. He said if we wanted to stop using diesel and gasoline and switch to electric, if we were able to do that, say we did it tomorrow, he said we would need 9 more Site C dams. I couldn't believe that. I was guessing the other day and thought I was being pessimistic, and I guessed maybe 3 more. But he said no, and he had all the graphs, all the stats, all the data right there. And again, he's the guy, he wants a carbon tax. He's an environmentalist. But he's a really smart person when it comes to data and math and energy usage. 9 more? Can you imagine 9 more Site C dams?
Well, you'd have to flood pretty well all of British Columbia.
And try to get, even if you wanted to, try to get approval for that. Or how long it would take. And all of the construction equipment you'd need that runs on diesel and gasoline to make that go. And to pour that cement or whatever they're using. And to fabricate the rebar. It's mind-boggling the amount of energy required to build that level of infrastructure. And so, for folks who want to switch tomorrow, I understand philosophically why you want to do that, but we have to be really practical on how we gradually make that transition, because it is not an either-or thing.
Joseph Schachter, who does the Schachter Energy Report out of Calgary, said, sure, Europe and North America, they want to go to EVs, but he said outside of China and Japan, the rest of Asia and all of Africa, they're still going to use diesel and gasoline engines for decades to come. So again, the load on the planet's atmosphere you may feel good here because you're driving an EV. And by the way, they have terrific torque. They are performers. Try ludicrous mode in a Tesla. It'll blow your mind. But in realistic terms, maybe here your car is running on hydro, but your electric car in China will be running on coal.
Yeah, and it likely will be. And in fact, depending on the day, apparently, according to Stuart Muir, who's with the Resource Works people, depending on the day, apparently at night much of the time, when folks have their Teslas and their cool electric cars plugged in the Lower Mainland, it's using coal power from Alberta to charge it. I didn't know that. I just assumed that we were using BC Hydro electric dam power. But apparently not. It cycles over to Alberta coal that are charging the electric cars in the driveway. All of this is to say is, transition is possible as long as super smart people keep inventing amazing things for us and we're really careful with our emissions and our pollution and our technology, but it's not happening tomorrow, and we are very, very reliant on oil and gas for critical life-saving infrastructure. Like now with the floods is a good example. Like these backhoes and these excavators and all that stuff, they don't plug those things in. They're running on diesel. Like we need this sort of stuff in order to stay alive and to stay warm. And so, again, to the carbon tax, all that does is take money out of people's pockets. It's not helping at all. Our fuel consumption is still ticking up. Our emissions are going up at a very steady rate. I think it was 11% over the past 3 years, and in 5 of the last 7. I mean, we were supposed to reduce our, in 2020, if I get my math right here, in 2020 we were supposed to have reduced our emissions to 33% below 1997 levels. We blew that target. I think we're 4% higher. We were supposed to be 33% lower. So setting these targets isn't working. Our emissions keep going up. The carbon tax keeps going up, and it's going to go up even worse because now we're tied into the backstop that Justin Trudeau put through of $170 a ton.
What's that translate into per liter?
Per liter, I've got it per minivan. So right now it's about $20 a minivan per fill-up for the carbon taxes in BC. It'll be $40 a minivan. So double it. And that's within the next 9 years. And those of us of a certain vintage know that 9 years goes by real fast.
Oh yeah, I remember when the Vancouver Olympics were announced, and the next thing you know, I'm covering gold medal ceremonies. It happens overnight.
It's a blink. So yeah, unfortunately, that means it's doubling. And again, even if Canada shut everything down tomorrow and froze in the dark, it wouldn't matter, globally speaking. And so we really need smart, hardworking, average Canadians to get this message through politicians' heads.
Yeah.
So they need to pick up the phone. They need to send a letter once all this current crisis is over in BC and we're safe, and tell them that this is, we need to cancel the carbon taxes. If people truly are worried about global emissions, then focus on the big players like India and China while keeping our own rivers, streams, and environment as clean as possible here in BC, because the carbon tax is just impoverishing average people.
Kris, as you know, we could continue for hours, but we have other things we have to get to, like you have to keep your family safe in Hope, which has been essentially cut off from the rest of the planet by all the flooding.
Yeah, it has been. All the major arteries are blocked, and just thank you, kudos and appreciation to all the hardworking people that are out there right now trying to clear the way to get folks home who are trapped here and to get supplies back in, and also to open up the interior to supplies, because I know a lot of people are scared right now, and I know a lot of people are out there working as hard as they can, and we really admire them.
Kris, thank you so much.
Thank you.
My guest has been Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Kris, if people wanted to contact you, how do they do it?
They can send me an email. It's the letter K Sims. So ksims@taxpayer.com.
And if you'd like us to ask a question of Kris, we'll do it if you send it to info@housestreet.com, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.